Welcome back. This is Jim Ransom, and we're going to have another episode of Morning Jim Poetry for April 29th. And I promised you last week I would continue to read and review some of the poetry of Archibald MacLeish. You remember we had his biography last week, and I was so impressed by his background that I spent a little more time on it than I do regarding most poets. And you'll recall he was born with what we would have called back then a silver spoon in his mouth. And he led a career enhanced greatly by knowing the right people and being in the right place at the right time. Remember, part of his career was during the Great Depression, and another part was during World War II. He lived through a lot of important American history. But he also had a huge talent on top of a good education and good luck. Listen to this poem that we're going to lead off with today. It's called Immortal Autumn. Immortal Autumn by Archibald MacLeish. I speak this poem now with grave and level voice, in praise of autumn, of the far horn winding fall. I praise the flower-barren fields, the clouds, the tall, unanswering branches where the wind makes sullen noise. I praise the fall. It is the human season. Now no more the foreign sun does meddle at our earth, enforce the green, and bring the fallow land to birth, nor winter yet weigh all with silence the pine bough. But now in autumn with the black and outcast crows share we the spacious world. The whispering year is gone. There's more room to live now. The once secret dawn comes late by daylight, and the dark, unguarded, goes. Between the mutinous brave burning of the leaves and winter's covering of our hearts with his deep snow, we are alone. There are no evening birds. We know the naked moon. The tame stars circle at our eaves. It is the human season. On this sterile air do words outcarry breath. The sound goes on and on. I hear a dead man's cry from autumn, long since gone. I cry to you beyond, upon this bitter air. This is one of the few poems that I know in which the author gives you directions for how to read the poem. And they're in the first line of the poem. I speak this poem now with grave and level voice, he says. I'm not very good at grave and level voices. But from what I hear about Archibald MacLeish, that's the way he read almost everything. But this is a very finely constructed poem. The rhyming scheme in this poem is ABBA. So he says, I speak this poem now with grave and level voice, in praise of autumn, of the far horn winding fall. I praise the flower-barren fields, the clouds, the tall unanswering branches where the wind makes sullen noise. The fourth line of that quatrain, noise, doesn't exactly rhyme with voice, which is at the end of the first line. And he does quite a bit better in the second stanza, where he says, I praise the fall, it is the human season. Now no more the foreign sun does meddle at our earth, and force the green and bring the fallow land to birth, nor winter yet weigh all with silence, the pine bough. You'll see the rhyme now and bough and earth and birth, and mostly his rhymes are quite good. He doesn't have to use many para-rhymes, but some very good poems in the English language have been written with what I call para-rhymes, with words that don't quite rhyme but almost do. He has one line in this poem that is not in a quatrain because he has deliberately removed it from the third quatrain and made a separate line of it. And it doesn't have a rhyming line. He says, I praise the fall, it is the human season. Now no more the foreign sun does meddle at our earth, and force the green and bring the fallow land to birth, nor winter yet weigh all with silence, the pine bough. So I praise the fall, it is the human season, is separated from the second quatrain, but it is set up as a separate line. But if it is added to that quatrain, then now rhymes with bough. It's a little trick, but it works. It works very well. I like Immortal Autumn. I think it is very much in keeping with MacLeish's style of writing poetry, and it no doubt was well tuned to his style of reading poetry. Now, let's move on to another choice. This one's called The Rock in the Sea. The Rock in the Sea. Think of our blindness where the water burned. Are we so certain that those wings returned and turning, we had half discerned before our dazzled eyes had surely seen the bird aloft there, did not mean our hearts so seized upon the sign? Think how we sailed upwind, the brine tasting of Daphne, the enormous wave thundering in the water cave, thunder in stone, and how we beached the skiff and climbed the coral of that iron cliff and found what only in our hearts we'd heard, the silver screaming of that one white bird, the fabulous wings, the crimson beak that opened red as blood to shriek and clamor in that world of stone. No voice to answer but its own. What certainty, hidden in our hearts before, found in the bird, its metaphor. This poem, I think, is very typical of how MacLeish approaches his themes. A crowd of images still telling a story. It may be based on a true event, the search for a seabird, but oddly, he never identifies the bird, so the message must not be the exact nature of the bird. The bird may be an albatross. I don't think an albatross has a red beak, but there's more than one kind of albatross, and I'm not a specialist in albatrosses. So I think it's an albatross because of the way he describes the size of the bird and the word albatross has layers of literary meaning, doesn't it? But the message of the poem does not depend on the identity of the bird. And I think that's why he does not identify it for us. So he ends the poem with a rhyming couplet. He says, "What certainty, hidden in our hearts before, found in the bird its metaphor." Indeed, what certainty is it? And remember what he said in the first line. Think of our blindness where the water burned. Are we so certain that those wings returned in turning we had half discerned before our dazzled eyes had surely seen the bird aloft there, did not mean our hearts so seized upon the sign? He's saying, really in more complex language, that it doesn't really make much difference what kind of bird it was. It was the search and all the effort and work that went in it that made the difference. And he couldn't say, really, whether the bird they had seen in the air was the same as the one they found in the rock cave on the shore with the booming waves crashing into the hole in the rock. It's a crowd of images still telling a story. Maybe it's based on a true event, but we don't know that. I'm guessing that he couldn't identify the bird at any point in the search, but he's telling us this story anyway. And one of the deeper meanings is that should we believe our eyes, or what we see may not be what really is? There's a lot of messages that you could take from this poem. The Rock in the Sea by Archibald MacLeish. I love that poem, and I like it even more the more I think about it, the more I consider it. And I would certainly encourage you to get that poem and read it. And I'm welcome to have anybody contact me and give me another deeper message than what I've been able to discern from it. No doubt there is one there. Okay, now I'm going to read a final poem. This will be the fifth or sixth poem in the Archibald MacLeish cycle. I'm not quite sure how many we had the first time around, maybe 3. So this would make it number 6. And it's called Liberty. Liberty by Archibald MacLeish. Liberty is a short poem, and it's from his collected poems 1917 to 1982. It was published by Houghton Mifflin. Liberty. When liberty is headlong girl and runs her roads and wends her ways liberty will shriek and whirl her showery torch to see it blaze. When liberty is wedded wife and keeps the barn and counts the byre, liberty amends her life. She drowns her torch for fear of fire. Well, what are we to make of that poem? It has several layers of meaning. Does he mean that once liberty has settled down, the torch of freedom should be extinguished? That might be the intended meaning. As MacLeish was once accused of having communist sympathies after World War II was over. And he had flirted with Marxism/communism earlier in his career, but there's no evidence that he took any of it seriously by the end of the war. So I doubt if he's telling us that liberty should be extinguished. I do think he is saying that liberty should never become a wedded wife, as he puts it. Liberty should always be running around with the showery torch, as he describes it. And she should be shrieking and whirling and waving her showery torch. This is why the United States is so influential in the world, because we have liberty and the torch, the showery torch raised high in the air. It's our symbol. It's in New York Harbor, isn't it? And I'm sure he was probably thinking of that very Statue of Liberty when he wrote that poem. So liberty, it should never be a wedded wife. Liberty should be there begging people to come forward. And boy, do they ever follow that direction. Thousands, millions are coming across the borders right now, way more than we should be allowing in, along with a host of nasty drugs and criminals of all sorts. And they're coming across the border. So he doesn't want liberty to become a wedded wife, but I don't know whether he wants liberty to be running the road and wending her ways, shrieking and whirling to bring everybody in the world to greet us here in their own language in our America. I don't think that's what he had in mind. But anyway, that's just my take on it. But I think it's a poem worth reading more than once. Liberty by Archibald MacLeish. Okay, let me make one more comment about MacLeish. I suggest that if you want to see the fullest view of Archibald MacLeish, read his book-length historical poem Conquistador about the conquest of Mexico. It is a spectacular book-length poem. And he was requested to read the whole thing at readings on more than one occasion. And of course, it's not a poem that I could read in a short program like this that has to be less than half an hour in length. But I hope you enjoyed this program, and we'll tune in next weekend for another, but it won't be about Archibald MacLeish. No, we'll have a new subject then. But I think you will enjoy it. So until then, goodbye now.